And before going into my investment strategy, I want to lay some context. The first is that I've lost roughly a third of all of the money that I've invested. So, that's certainly, worth noting. The second is, even with those losses, the result of prioritizing investing rather than just an expedient lifestyle has significantly expanded my access to resources, my dreaming and visioning about the future. And the third is that I think it's useful in anything where we don't have full control, meaning neither I nor you have full control of the economy, the ups and downs of sentiment around a particular stock, etc. To have a strategy where you win whether you lose or you win. And so I want to start with that as my kind of beginning. The companies and things that I try and invest in are things that I believe, rightly or wrongly, are taking me towards a more beautiful world, a world that I want to live in. Now, looked in that light, if there's more of a world that I want to live in as a result of allocating money to different things, then I win whether or not my stocks make a lot of money or lose a lot of money. And Tesla is the beginning of that story for me. In 2017, I had just finished reading Ashley Vance's biography on Elon Musk, and I found a number of things to be enormously disturbing. Here was a young man who had, from the age of 12, been dreaming about humanity's greatest challenges and how to solve them. That's the first thing. And I'd never read about anyone since the age of 12, which means that our culture, our cult, produces lots and lots of people who dream of getting rich and living in luxury, but almost no one who dreams of working 100-hour weeks in order to answer and respond to humanity's problems. Now, again, looking at that kind of pattern, would the world be a better place if the majority of people at age 12 were thinking about the world's biggest problems and working 100 hours a week to solve those problems? Of course it would. We would be in a 10x better world if even half of our population from age 12 focused on what are our biggest problems as a species, as a planet, and spent their time trying to solve them. But we're not producing, as a cult, we do not produce young people with that as a primary focus. We produce addicts, right? We produce children in grown bodies. We produce narcissists who, the whole world should focus on them, right? So we produce lots of those, but we produce very few Elon Musks. And that has nothing to do with Elon Musk, right? That has to do with a failure of our cult to instill long-term vision or global responsibility, to focus on take it easy, don't work too hard, etc., and very little on pursuing large, seemingly impossible goals, such as making the entire planet multiplanetary, or switching to sustainable energy, or solving traffic problems through tunneling that's earthquake-proof, etc., or reducing smog so that 4 million people have less cancer, right? Or saving the taxpayer 90 cents of every dollar for space activity, or bringing internet to rural areas that don't have communication around the world. So these are really big and important goals. And whether you agree that these are the most important goals, it doesn't matter. We need thousands of driven people who ask the question, what is best for the species? That answer the question, that iterate and explore that question and go and pursue and dedicate their lives to making the world a better place. We need that. It is good for ecology to have that. It's good for our future to have that. It's good for evolution, right? The world is a better place with more children asking that question and devoting their life to answering it, right? The world is a much better place. And so what I saw happening was that Tesla was the largest short position, meaning there were more billionaire assholes betting against Tesla, trying to make money from Tesla failing, than any other company in history, right? And then you understand why so few people have the dream of making the planet a better place, right? So what do? Well, first you get called weird. Secondly, you're not taken seriously. Thirdly, you work 100-hour weeks and are undermined at various turns in that journey. Fourth, you get constantly criticized by the press as if you're going to fail. And then fifthly, all your billionaire friends gang up to sell the stock short and talk about how it's going to fail it every day. And none of those billionaire friends actually show up and work at the factory to make it succeed, to make the world a better place. And so, I saw, in 2017, everyone was going to say Elon's going to fail. And I kind of looked at it like as a philanthropic thing. The world needs more visionaries. The world needs more dedicated individuals who are thinking big. The world needs more altruism, more focus on what's good for the planet. The world needs more technical geniuses. And the world needs clean air. And it needs cheaper electric cars. And it needs safer cars. And it needs to become multiplanetary. And so what I saw was that the most successful people in our cult were ganging up, Bill Gates among them, right? Ganging up to destroy Tesla rather than to help it succeed. And that seemed sick to me. It seemed like there was a lot of self-hatred as a species, that we would produce so very, 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 very few Elon Musks, right? That's an act of self-hatred and failure to begin with. And that secondly, right, having produced one Elon Musk, we would then undermine and all of his friends got together to try and convince him not to start a rocket company, right? That it was going to fail, and don't start a car. Just go out and enjoy your island somewhere and, have lots of beautiful women and buy a lot of things. Like, these are not innovative ideas. These are dumb, well played out, unsustainable ideas. And that's what his friends are trying to help him do, right? Become an idiot like the rest of us. So he goes against his friends. He puts all his money into the company. He works 100-hour weeks and is being ganged up on. And this seems so sad, so cruel, that we would do this to our one or two kids that would actually think big for the species. Let's gang up on them and see that they fail, and let's all bet that they fail. I mean, how fucked up of a cult do you want to live in where 90% of the young people we produce have just given up already or do nothing about the problem but add to it. And then of those that work tirelessly, most do not succeed. And then one person, right, comes out of them and looks like they're going to make it happen and all that. And then we all gang up to make them fail. I mean, this is so sick. It's so destructive. It's so self-loathing. It seemed deeply wrong. So I put all of my money into Tesla at that point. Now, I would have donated it to Elon if there was, if Elon had said, here's a fund to help make great things happen in the world, I think we can have a shot at it. Donate to this fund, right? That's that's an intelligent thing, because Elon is more efficient and more intelligent than 99% of the people working in the nonprofit sector. And this is a visionary company, right? It's really a nonprofit company, right? He thought there was a 90% chance that he would fail. Most everyone else thought that he would fail, right? Succeeding, this is not the path to the greatest riches, right? This is an enormous undertaking. But what does the world get? It gets 3 to 4 times safer cars. It gets 3 to 4 times less theft. It gets 100% less smog in the cities, right? Because the power is generated outside where there's, the coal and all that can dissipate, right? So you get cleaner air. You get less noise and muffler, irritants and all that, right? You get a car that goes for has longer, the motor can run 1 million miles. This is incredibly good for the environment. And so I put all my money in just to kind of vote sane, to basically say, I want my money with the people who are working 100-hour weeks to improve our lives. That's what I want. Now, a miraculous thing happened, which, had never happened before, and which I certainly didn't anticipate, was my money went up tenfold. Because despite all of the bureaucracy, despite all of the media frenzy, despite all the cruelty of idiots like Gates trying to destroy one of our best companies, well, the stock went up. And because when you manage to succeed against everyone betting against you, the short positions start to lose money, right? And so they have to buy the stock back. So the greatest shorted stock becomes the greatest bought back stock. So they all have to. Plus, if you prove all those people wrong, then people want in, right? It's a very sick environment. Like if you really need help, nobody wants to help you. But if you win against all the cruelty and stacked up against you, then everyone wants to make money, right? So it's a very short-sighted system. So I ended up making 10x on Tesla, in that dynamic, which was an amazing surprise. It's like, I wanted Elon to have my vote and have my money to do something with. I went up. So that's the first type of both example of winning while losing, meaning there was a good chance that I would lose all my money, right? But I would have voted for a world worth existing. And that's what I wanted, right? So that's my first criteria for investing is if I put in my money and never made a dime or lost all of it, am I confident that the world would be a better place because my money went into that probability field? And my answer was yes, right? So that's framing how to win while losing. I would like all my money to be in areas where if I lost all of it, I wouldn't say, what a fool I was or why didn't. I would say that I put my money in the places where it made a difference for not only me and my country, but for the species, right? So that's one thing. The second thing, and this also ties together with the fact that I donate most of my money to nonprofits, right? And I formed nonprofits so that I could donate money to those. And then I invest the nonprofit money in things that I think are important. So in Gates's world, you bet against the important environmental companies. You supposedly make money. In fact, Gates lost $1.5 billion betting against Tesla. And then you give that money to do something good. In other words, you destroy companies that are doing good work, and then you donate the profits to crappy nonprofits that are less effectively run in many instances than for-profit companies that have really good fiscal discipline. So that's right. So that's a movement towards, like, I'm trying to make the world into something that I would like to live in, whether I do it through nonprofit or investment. So that's the first thing. Win while losing, and look at things that make the world a better place. Now, the second aspect of making the world a better place is being on the cutting edge of what I would call best practices. So another area that I've put money and overall lost money, but am glad that I put money in this area, is Cathie Wood's and her ETFs on innovation. Now, the reason for that is she has an open source publishing transparent model for her ETFs that I think the world would be a significantly healthier and better places if all money managers approach their investments the way Cathie Wood's approaches her investments. So she focuses on really close-in analysts that work with companies and that talk, and they publish everything and all their models online. So it's what I'm voting for is a best practice that one, spotted Tesla before any other major investor did, and two, is bringing thought and awareness rather than the delineation between you're the experts and we're the idiots who don't know anything. It's bringing a transparency into where we're not going to hide anything. So if you've got a brain, you can know as much as we do, right? And so I like that model. And so I'm voting for the best practice of that model. And so, and in that area, I'm also, I've lost more money on Buffett than I have on Tesla, in terms of, percentage of, stuff. And, and that's a good thing. Like Buffett is highly critical of Tesla as this big risky stock. I've lost more on Buffett in the last 6 months since taking a position than I have on Tesla in the last 6 months. So but there what I'm focusing on is leadership, right? So Buffett is focusing on quality returns. He's also focusing on ethics and transparency with his shareholders. He's focusing on long-term thinking and de-risking. And so my vote there is simply for the ethics involved. I don't like most of the companies Buffett is in because their ethics, the Kraft food, for example, how to make people fat faster, it's not a lot of the underlying companies are not at the cutting edge of going, making the world a better place. But the fiduciary responsibility, the transparency, the community, the long-term thinking, I really and the focus on investing rather than gambling. Those are best practices. And so Buffett is leading the way in best practices in certain areas. So that's in that category of, are there best practices? So is Tesla. Tesla's transparency thing around SpaceX and just kind of making everything, or I should say Elon Musk strategy of transparency. I really think that that transparency is good for the public, and so I'm appreciating that best practice. Now, the other thing is that over time, growth stocks perform better than non-growth stocks. But they're also, as growth stocks in innovative and important technologies, they're more leveraged because they're growing and they have that momentum. They're having more impact than an area that isn't growing. And because growth stocks tend to be new technologies, well, that's what evolution depends on, new technologies that work. And so that's an area that I want to focus on generally. Buffett would be an example of not doing that, but 2/3 of my money is in growth investments. Now, a detour from this and kind of taking some of this, will the world be a better place, type of dynamic is, I've been concerned about, for example, the abuse of power in which the U.S. government is not only going after freedom of the press in cases of WikiLeaks or in cases of Edward Snowden, right? They've brought important data to light, right, that their bosses and their governments would have killed off about how tax money is being spent to make the world a more sociopathic, a more unhealthy place. And so we need that awareness. We need people bringing things to light. I'm a big believer that the more we know of what's going on in the shadows, the more we can respond before our own tax money is spent to undermine our personal values, right? So looking at, for example, the way the U.S. government has pressured all the credit card companies not to let WikiLeaks get any money. That's a massive abuse of governmental power, which they can do because they control the currency. Then there's also the government abuse of power of printing money, inflation, right? Which many people around the world cannot do much about if their government decides to triple the printing that year and devalue the money by 70%. What can you do, right? If that's the only money that they'll give you at the bank and all that. So, in that situation, having a deflationary currency that's available to all that can support things that the government is abusing its power to shut down seems like it's an important technology in creating a liberation from a monopoly on power by central governments. And so having the discipline, right? I believe that having something like Ethereum, now there's Bitcoin, but Bitcoin uses a tremendous amount of coal generation and electricity to produce that network. There's Bitcoin, but there's also Ethereum, which produces or consumes far less energy. I think that having a couple of global currencies is a disciplining force for central governments. They have to think now about that. If we do this and this, how much money will go over into Bitcoin or Ethereum? And I think that that's a very important freedom. I've had my nonprofit was trying to buy land in the Philippines, and there were so many regulations about that the sale never went through. That you couldn't carry more than this amount of cash on the plane. The people wanted cash or this. You couldn't wire money from this to the. It was just endless BS that stopped a nonprofit from helping a local community, basically. But they accepted Bitcoin, right? But I didn't have any Bitcoin at the time, right? So that was just an awareness that I would like people to have more freedom outside their central government controls to exchange energy for good purposes. Now, whenever you do that, of course, you open up the possibility of exchanging money for bad purposes. And so that's always the case, but the same is true with cash. If nobody had any money, people couldn't buy child pornography. There would be no cash. So do you get rid of all cash because people might spend it on something you don't agree with? People wouldn't, if there was no money, people wouldn't buy electricity from coal plants and pollute the environment. So do you get rid of all money because that will shut down coal plants, and it would? Well, the same is true with any currency argument, but central governments are, of course, fighting really against losing control. They're not actually, cash is being used for all kinds of self-destructive and species-destructive purposes today, and no doubt a certain amount of crypto assets will be used for destructive purposes as well. But what I'm focused on are the fact that a lot of those horrific activities happen regardless, but there are good things that don't happen because people cannot exchange money. And I can put $100,000 of cryptocurrency on a disk and travel around the world and help people in different parts of the world that I couldn't bring the cash without it being seized. And so I think that's a tremendous freedom that I want to support existing. So that's something that I put, investment into. And so those are, so just in summary, put money in things where I win if I lose it all. Meaning I want a world where there are currencies that central governments do not control. Bitcoin and Ethereum meet that criteria. Now, they could fail or they could go down in value. But I'm putting energy into that so that they can succeed. And if they do succeed, I've got a world that's worth living in. If they don't succeed, I still put money into something that I believe in. Second, growth stocks over slow stocks, both because those are the sectors that are most experimental and bringing in the best new technology, and because those are the things that outperform bonds and stuff over time. And then, finally looking for best practices. That's another win while losing, right? So I've lost money so far on my investments in Cathie Wood's, but I'm still highly supportive of of her model, right? And that money may, over a 5-year period, return. So that's my investment thesis. And even with the money that I've lost, I've found that by putting a lot of my money into nonprofit investment portfolios, guided by these approach, I'm thinking bigger, I'm visioning bigger, I'm dreaming bigger which is another form of winning, whether I win or lose.